My wife nearly died on June 10th, 2017, following a massive stroke that she had had. You see, on that day, we actually had a really bad argument. She told me that she had never been that anxious her entire life. My wife struggles with anxiety, normally, so I didn't think anything of it. But what she told me, she said that it had never been that bad. So because I was late for work, I didn't spend time to actually see what was going on to see how I could help. I prayed with her, I kissed her on the forehead, and then I walked out of the door. That was the very last time that I saw my wife before her stroke. The next time I saw my wife, she had a tube down her throat, lines everywhere. I remember walking into the room, seeing my wife unconscious. She had a central line. She was getting ready to go into emergency brain surgery. I bent over, I whispered in her ear, and I said, "Michelle, you've got to fight for us." And fight she has. That day changed everything for us. We learned after the stroke, after the brain surgery, that my wife had a disease called moya disease. It's a disease that she was born with. She had headaches her entire life. It wasn't caught. Had it been caught, there's a chance that Michelle could have had a corrective surgery that may have prevented the stroke altogether. The one thing that did sting is a note that I read in her medical record after the surgery. I had learned that her doctor had written, "Michelle has frequent, intense, mid-right pain, stops her in her tracks, and it reoccurs." And that's where the stroke was, on the mid-right side of her brain. So my wife was in ER getting prepped for surgery. On the way into the OR, the surgeons had to drill a burr hole into her brain. They actually had like a drill. They punctured her skull and they extracted like 75 milliliters of blood that had pooled on the right side of her brain. And then while she was in the OR, they had to take off her skull. They drilled right down the middle, down the whole right side, took the bone flap off, and that's where that had been placed in a bone bag, kept in a freezer, waiting until the doctors can reattach it later on. So with the bone flap removed, the doctors had to proceed to remove a good portion of her brain. The right temporal lobe of her brain and part of the frontal lobe, they were gone. They had to be resected because the damage from the bleed was irreparable. The word that comes to mind that night, what I heard over and over and over, was grim. Michelle's outlook for survival was grim. And what makes matters worse is that my wife was 6 weeks pregnant. The outcome for my baby was grim. The baby's life ended tragically because of the moya disease, which if you're not sure what it is, basically it's when over time the arteries in your brain become narrowed, which reduces the amount of blood and oxygen supply to your brain. See, the brain is smart, so it knows that it has to get the blood flow and the oxygen back, so it grows artificial arteries, and those artificial arteries ruptured, causing the hemorrhagic stroke. So my wife actually had a hemorrhagic stroke, TIA, which is a mini stroke, and a seizure. So those three things, boom, boom, boom. And she had all of those while I was at work, and my wife was alone with our three kids, our three boys. At the time, they were 9, 5, and 2. My son Connor actually called 911. He walked in the room, and as he walked in the room, Michelle had a seizure. So imagine seeing, if you've never seen a seizure before, you know it's super scary. Well, Connor saw his mom have a seizure. And what I learned recently is that God gave him peace. God gave him peace during that time to call 911. God gave him the words to say, and he remembers the peace that he had. What I learned recently is that he had prayed for God to give him peace and the words to say. It's just amazing that a 9-year-old could do that. And I listened to the 911 call, and yeah, it's he was calm during the storm. Just amazing how God provides. Through all of this, I became my wife's caregiver. But through this also grew a purpose. It grew a purpose to share the hope that is in us. Even in the storm, even when things happen so hard. We wrote a book. Our book is called Hope Undeferred, Finding the Light While in the Tunnel. I'll post a link to the book in the description. You should read it. It took 4 years to write, but that 4 years of writing was very therapeutic for me. During the whole process of writing the book, I interviewed my wife. And even 4 years after the stroke, I learned things that I never knew before about what she went through. She remembers, even while being unconscious, she remembers thinking about the boys. Are the boys going to be okay? Who's going to have my boys? Which that is another amazing story that you got to read the book for. It's amazing how things work out, even when you least expect it. You know, life is so fragile. It can change just like that. It can change in the blink of an eye. I've learned many lessons from during this time. But one lesson that I've also learned is that things happen to everybody, but it's our decision on how we respond to those things. It's our decision on how we handle it. It's so easy to take the road of resentment, of bitterness, of hatred, being mad at God and shaking your fist. What good would that do for you? For your family? And that's a question that I was faced with early on. As a husband and as a father, I felt an obligation to respond well, but not by my strength, but by God, who has given me strength to do everything that he has called for me to do. You see, there's a verse in the Bible that says, I think it's in Ephesians, it says that God has prepared good works in order for you to walk in them. God planned for me to be a caregiver to my wife. What's really hard also is that God's plan was for my wife to have the stroke. It is so hard to think that something like that is true, but it is. Even people ask oftentimes, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, the Bible says that there is no one good, not even one. We are all led astray. Nobody desires God, but again, it's God who calls us to himself. I don't know what you're going through today. There's a lot of hurt in this world. You might have lost a loved one. You might have been let go of a job, your dream job even, for years, and you don't know what to do. You don't know what the future holds, but you need to look to the one who holds the future in his hands. When I was waiting for my wife's emergency brain surgery to be done, it was amazing. The church response was so good to see how they responded. My pastor was there with about 25 other people, all in a circle, out in the lobby. We were worshiping God in the storm. Again, it's supernatural. Not by our own strength, but that he gave us strength. He started reading from Romans chapter 8, I think verse 26, when he said, "In the same way, the Spirit also helps our weakness, for we do not know how to pray as we should. But the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words." And I interrupted him. You see, I had my phone in my hand when I was reading the Bible in the YouVersion app. And I previously had highlighted Romans 8:18, which says, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared to the glory that is to be revealed to us." You see, there were plenty of interruptions that night with the doctors coming out, but that was an interruption that my pastor said was needed. How was it possible that while her life was on the line, I could still read that? It's because of the hope that we have in Jesus. Romans 8, starting in verse 24, says, "For in hope we have been saved. But hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what he already sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, with perseverance We wait eagerly for it. It's that hope that has given me peace during the hardest time. I can't believe it's already been almost 8 years. God has been gracious enough for me to be here to you today to talk to you about this, to tell you about the hope that is in me, the hope that can only be found in Jesus. So let me encourage you today on your journey. No matter what you're going through, know that God is for you. And if He is for you, nobody, nothing can stand against you. If you like what you hear, go ahead, please like and subscribe for more posts, for more videos like this, and just allow me to be able to pour into you and walk with me through this journey I call the faithful man's journey. God bless.